So I'm going to be talking you through the science of self. So this workshop is about learning about unlocking your own potential. So it's about how, first part of it is my own journey. It's my own journey on how I managed to heal when I was really suffering physically, and how I managed to recreate the situation that I was in, and also how everybody else can do this. It's nothing woo-woo, it's science-based, so I will speak to you about the different elements of the science that makes all of this stuff possible. So welcome. This is my beautiful team of fans that travel around with me, just in case none of you guys decide to watch this video. So here they are, my fan club. So this is about my journey. So my journey started, if you can see on the top left there, it started back in probably around March, I think, or April of last year. And I fractured my spine doing aerial yoga. Now, what ended up happening is I had a bad fall, and I fractured the L5 at the base of my spine. Now, at the time, I realized that I was in a lot of pain. I didn't really understand what was going on. In fact, I kind of braved it out for about 24 hours until it got so bad that I could barely do anything. So I went to the hospital. They took some scans, and basically they told me that I was fine and I should go home and take some painkillers. Great, super helpful. So then what ended up happening is on the Tuesday after that, I was in so much pain, and I was like, I'm sure there's something wrong going on here. I need to see Russ. So any of you that know Dr. Russ Hornstein, he's a legend. It's kind of like a neuroscientist / chiropractor, and he's just a miracle worker with the body. So I was like, I really need to go and see Russ. He'll just check me over, probably give me a bit of cracks and get me back on my way, basically. So on the Tuesday, I managed to brave the car journey and head down to Malta. I had some wonderful friends taking care of me. I mean, this is me in the bed here. So I couldn't move, I couldn't dress myself, I couldn't cook for myself, I couldn't wash myself, I couldn't get in and out of bed without a lot of pain. So I had to have a 24-hour care system. So these beautiful friends in the photo there's Eleanor and Goncha were really taking care of me, and Carolyn also, which was really a blessing really, and taught me a lot about how to ask for help, ask for support. Obviously, these things are all meant to be part of the journey that we're going on. So I managed to get down to go and see Russ. I think it was Goncha that came up to collect me, pick me up in the car from Gozo, get me over on the ferry to Malta. I was in so much pain in that car journey. It was just unbelievable. I went to see Russ, and he gave me a quick check over, tap, 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 had a little look at my spine, and he said, no, something's definitely up. He said, it feels like you have a fracture, and I don't want to touch you until you've had your x-rays done. So he sent me off to this radiology clinic, which was just up the road. And he got them to do 5 different x-rays so they could see the base of my spine, basically. And so they did the x-rays. He actually waited very kindly in his clinic until I got back. I got back to the clinic. He looked them over, and lo and behold, very obviously on the x-rays was fracture. So he said, I can't do anything with you. You need to go home. You need to take care of yourself. You need to rest. So I went back up to Gozo, and consequently the next week or so I was just horizontal. I literally couldn't do anything. Couldn't maneuver myself on my own. I had to be helped up and out of the bed, and helped down and up from anything that I happened to be laying on. Couldn't sit, couldn't really do anything at all. So I dropped into this well of despair of, why has this happened to me? What's going on with all of this? How have I created this? I've got 20 years of self-help in my belt. How have I ended up in this situation? How have I ended up in this position? And what I realized is that there's a strategy that I've had from a very young age about creating drama in my life. And it was a really interesting introspection of myself, and a reflection, a real time of reflection, to say, wow, I've created this because what I feel is that when I'm under distress or when I have something, it gives more of a reason to be loved. You know, like as a child, if you're happy, joyful, getting on with things, mostly your parents will leave you alone, kind of. And I noticed that I had this strategy that, you know, if there was drama there, then I would get attention. I was like, wow, this is like really something that I've created all of this suffering from. It's unbelievable, you know. So I thought, right, well, this is definitely something that I need to get rid of. So I consequently, ironically, in those 10 days, 7 to 10 days, I did not do any of my normal self-help practices. Didn't do any meditation, no yoga, didn't do anything that was good for myself. I was really welling in my own self throughout that journey. And then what happened is I realized that I probably needed to change some things. So I contacted a friend of mine and she started putting me on a liquid diet so I could cleanse my system, so my system could focus on regeneration. I started to think, okay, why am I not doing my meditations? Why am I not doing my breath work? What's happening? You know, this stuff I know heals me. And it was just this self-pity and self-feeling of like, I was really like upset. You know, I'd ended up horizontal and unable to do anything when I'm such a doer. And obviously that's why I ended up in this space and why I ended up needing to go through this process of learning and growing in the way where I'm humble and I ask for support and I ask for help. And I received it bountifully. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. So what then ended up happening was that I had to go back to the hospital because I'd been told to go back by A&E to come back and see the, if I remember what his name is, like the guy that works on the backs, basically. I'd basically been told to come back and check in with him, and he was a surgeon, so he would make sure that I had an MRI and, you know, did all of those things where they would just check that everything was okay. So anyway, we did an MRI scan and he said, it seems like you're okay. He said, you know, everything seems to be fine in there. And he said, but what we have noticed is that you have fluid in your abdomen. And I said, wait a second. So he said that there's no fracture on there, but there's fluid in my abdomen. That doesn't sound so great. So I said, oh, that's because I'm doing this juice fast, you know. And he said, no. He said, it's like there's fluid probably from the trauma in your abdomen. Because when I fell the opposite way. So I was kind of standing like this, doing my exercises and my back inverted. So it created a lot of pain and trauma on the front side and all down the back. Or my whole back was in spasm, basically. And he said, no, there's some fluid in the abdomen. And I'm not going to lie, I was terrified. So then and there in that hospital bed, I was just in the entrance way of the hospital. And then and there I decided, what am I doing? I have all of these tools. Let me just lay here and meditate. And my friend had gone to go and get me some smoothie and everything else. And so I laid there and I meditated for about 45 minutes. And I really visioned in, you know, all of the practices that I've done about, you know, how you can create your life, how you can vision in what you want to create by moving into that meditative state. So I laid there and I did my practice. And then my friend got back and we'd been there for about 6 or 7 hours by now. And she came back with my smoothie and I was like, okay, I'm ready, let's go home. And she was like, what do you mean go home? Yeah, you just got told that there was abdomen in your fluid. You have to wait for the next scan. And I said, no, I'm going to be fine, you know, let's just go home. So she was like, no, you know, we've been here 6 or 7 hours. Just get it checked over. So I said, okay, all right. So I got moved into a room and then they said, look, what we're going to do is we're going to do some blood tests. And when we do the blood tests, if it comes clear that your liver is okay, you can go home. They said, because now you've been waiting so long that the ultrasound person that you need to see to check out the fluid has gone home. So I said, great, you know. And they said, so what we'll do is we'll give you some blood tests. If your liver is fine, you can go home and come back in the morning. And I was like, that's totally what I'm going to do. I am going to get these things done. I'm going to pass this blood test. It's all going to be fine. I'm going to get out of here. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to do all the practices that I've been ignoring for like a week and get things going, basically. So needless to say, I had the blood test done, drank my smoothie, relaxed with my friend, waited patiently, and he came back and he said that the liver was fine, so I could leave. So I went home, and literally in those maybe 9 hours between the time of going home and the time of returning back to the hospital, I literally spent 6 of those hours in deep meditation. There's a doctor called Joe Dispenza, who I've been studying with these last years, and one of his kind of like advanced students. So he speaks a lot about the quantum field and how we can tap into the quantum field to create our reality, and how we do that using meditation. And there's sound and audio that happens through music as well within his meditations. He changes the way he speaks, so it shifts from normal speaking into something that doesn't trigger your beta brainwaves, which I'm going to speak about a bit shortly. And so anyway, I did a lot of practice with him. I did a lot of prayer, a lot of intention, a lot of number meditation, which is the other meditation that I do, and really just like called in this new reality that I wanted. I wanted to go back in the morning and have that scan clear. And I was so focused on it and so determined. And so what ended up happening is that I went back in the morning, and they did the scan, and everything was clear. And it was such a relief to me. And it was also a real pinnacle of my life of confirmation about how much this stuff works. And a lot of it has been a lesson around really, I've been made aware of how much this works. I already knew that it works because I've healed myself from whiplash in like 2 days. I had a car accident the year before, or 2 years before that, and somebody had driven into the back of me while I was stationary. And what ended up happening was that I would get up in the morning, I would be in complete agony, I would sit down, I would do my meditation, then I would do my Joe Dispenza visualization, and by the end of it, I would have no pain in my neck. By the end of the day, the pain would be back. I'd sleep, I'd get up in pain, I'd sit down, do my meditations, gone. So on the third day, the pain never came back. So I knew that this was a way that had worked for me already. And now I was determined. So I was like, okay, I don't have the inclination to like just be in my bed and feel sorry for myself. I don't want to be creating this drama in my life anymore. I'm going to sort this out. So after the scan was clear, I went home and I was like, right, I am back on it. I am back on my self-help train. I don't want to feel sorry for myself anymore. I don't want to be calling on all this stuff that is not serving me anymore. I want to work through this. I want to process it. So after that week of spending just with myself, really allowing myself to feel the pain, allowing myself to experience what I was going through, now it was time for action. So I started every day walking, and there's a photo of me there with my friend Don, who nearly every day would come and we would walk along the salt pans. And initially I could only walk maybe 10, 15 minutes before my back would be really sore and I'd have to go back home. And then over the days, I would be increasing the amount of walking that I was doing. I was also meditating every morning, doing a lot of prayer. Then I was doing the Joe Dispenza meditations, really focusing around what I wanted to create. I was also having the opportunity to research more about this amazing ability that we have to heal ourselves, and the amazing ability that we have to create the life that we want. So I was learning a lot about neuroscience. I was learning a lot about, there's an app called Curable, which is also really great. It's for people with chronic pain. So it teaches you about the way that your body reacts to your thought forms. So all of this stuff was so powerful for me. And then I remember it was my first day, and I'll just move this picture here. So this is a tower, and Eleanor had come up to Gozo, and she was actually helping me to walk down to this tower. And it was the first time I'd left the house after about 10 days of, experiencing all of this, the pain and the journey. And then after this, next 10 days, it was like, okay, let's go, let's do this. So we went to this tower, and it was a beautiful, beautiful triumph. Yes, I needed help. I was very scared on the rocks. I didn't want to fall again. I was very nervous. Then there's this photo of myself down by the sunset. And then what happened is about 2 or 3 weeks later, I had a boot camp, which is in the bottom photo there. I had a boot camp, international boot camp of entrepreneurs. because those of you that know me know that I also do a lot of startup and entrepreneur work and sustainability. So I was due to go to Germany, and I was determined that I was going to go to that course, because for me, I was like, I can overcome this. I have all of the tools. I have all of the kit. I know exactly how to do all of this stuff. Let's just do it, let's focus on it. And so every day I was like really strict with myself. I stayed on the juice and the smoothie diet, liquid diet. And my friend was like bringing it to my house. I still had people that were helping me get washed, helping me wash my clothes, helping me make the stuff that my friend would drop. It was a complete game changer for me. And I stopped doing all of these busy things that I'd been doing and actually just focused on myself and regenerating and allowing myself to drop into that humbleness of allowing myself to be supported and be within community. And it was such a powerful journey for myself. But really what it made me realize is how powerful we are, how powerful we are in fixing things. And literally 3 weeks later, I was on that plane. Now, people have told me that my healing journey happened faster than they can ever have imagined. They said, it's unbelievable what you managed to do in 2 to 3 weeks. I was up, I was walking, I was, traveling around. My dear project manager, Martina, was carrying my bags, bless her. But, it was such a powerful time for me of confirmation about what is possible. So it spurred me into actually stepping more into this powerful place of my own, where I share my journey with others. So that's what I'm here to do today. So these are the brainwave states. So as you can see here, you have the beta brainwaves. So the brainwaves you can see are fast. This is your awake state, your alertness, your consciousness, your thinking brain. So this activates the beta brainwaves. You move fast when you wake up in the morning. You're like, got this to do, got this to do, got this to do. Your beta brainwaves kick in. So in this state, you are not attached to the wider field. So I don't know how many of you know about kind of like, the quantum field or the unified field or the morphogenetic field, but there is a giant field that is consistently surrounding us. We are part of the field. Everything, the laptop that I'm speaking to you on, the table, everything that's happening in front of me here is all part of the wider field. And we are actually an incredibly 0.001% matter, and the rest of it is all just energy. So the matter comes into form through our focus. Now this is like quantum physics. This is nothing like, too out there. If you just Google it online, you will find information around this. Obviously, I studied quantum physics when I was younger, so I'm like super into all of this stuff. So there's a double slit experiment. Check it out on Google. You will learn about what perception does to bring reality from the field. And when we're connected to that wider field, we can create anything up there. There's all of the wisdom in the world, all of the energy in the world, all of the possibility. It's like an infinite field of possibility. I remember this whole statistics around like atoms and the repeated pattern of atoms in the whole cosmos, basically, and how many times it repeats. And there is a finite number of atoms, so there is repetition out there. So it's about creating what it is that you want in your life. So you come out of the beta brainwaves where you're not attached to that field, you connect to the alpha slowed down brainwaves, and automatically you're connected to this wider field. So it's a bit like there's some examples, for example, about how you can remember things in your subconscious that you can't remember in your conscious, and how things are stored in your subconscious. And all of this subconscious state is tapped into through the alpha and theta brainwaves. So your beta brainwaves, you're awake, alert, normal state of thinking. And in that thinking state, you're not creating. You're creating in physical form. If you slow your brainwaves down into the alpha state, you become relaxed. You start not engaging your thinking brain, and you start engaging in the wider field. This is where you start to become part of that wider field. Alpha, and then there's theta, where you drop into the deep relaxation. That's more on the deep meditative state where you're really connecting less with yourself and more with the wider field. So you're tapping into all of that information, even from ourselves. So this can even help us to tap into deeper traumas that we're carrying, things that we don't remember in our conscious brain. If you drop into alpha and into theta, you can access all of that stuff that's also happened to you. So if you've got old pains, old traumas that are in there, you can access this through this work. And this is why people use trance, for example, to go into that wider field. When people take psychedelics, what they're doing is they're dropping out of the thinking brain and they're dropping into these other states, and they're accessing the portal of all of that wisdom that's in that wider field. Now, I'm not here to be excited about psychedelics. What I'm here to do is to empower you that you can do this in a very simple way through meditation, through breath work. You can also tap into this field through movement. So it's whatever resonates with you. It's very easy for us to access that state purely by just stopping, coming out of the thinking brain and into that kind of more meditative state, and your brainwaves will automatically slow down. So then obviously then you have delta, which is like this deep dreamless sleep. But you don't need to go into that state to access this wider field of potentials. And the wider field of potentials literally has every single thing in it that you would want to create in your whole life. So in physical form, we're locked into this beta brainwave thinking state. I won't be able to receive this. I can't do this. You know, even me with my healing, I was suffering, I was in pain. I couldn't think outside the box. I couldn't get my brain into that alpha theta state. I was too much in my thinking brain and my pain. So these are the brainwave states. Google them, look them up, learn about them. It's phenomenal. So what happens is, now I'm going to speak about brain coherence. So when your brain goes into coherence, so when you start to meditate, for example, so the top is the individual brain. So what we're looking at is on the left-hand side here. So you're looking at the screen. On the left-hand side of the screen, you have, this is what's happening with the brainwave states. So the brainwaves are just speaking to individual areas. Then on the right-hand side, you have what happens when that brain goes into coherence. So as you can see, the whole brain is interlinking together. It's all working together. It's all harmonizing. Now, this is after 3 months of practicing meditation. So it's moved from an incoherent state in the brain to a coherent state. It's much faster, much quicker to get into that meditative state through practice. So during the practice, your neural pathways are changing. They're creating more coherence. They're learning how to work together. And what happens is, normally when we're in our thinking brain, we're either in our left or our right-hand side of our brain. So we're either intellectually coming up with something, or we're doing something on intuitive levels. So it's very hard for those guys to become into coherence. Now, what happens is, when you go into that alpha state, through meditation, breath work, dance, whatever it is that helps you drop into that sense of trance work, when you drop into that space, your brain goes into coherence. So the left and the right-hand side of the brain starts to work together, as you can see from the diagram. So this is a science-based diagram. Everything that I'm teaching you here is science-based. So when your brain goes into coherence, what ends up happening is it starts to self-organize from the wider field. Self-organize. So we don't need to control what's happening in our brain. We don't need to say, oh, I want to learn this or I want to learn that. It will naturally start to self-organize itself. Healing that you need will come. Everything that you want to access will come. If you set an intention before you go into that space, it will come into that space of coherence from the wider field, because you are harmonizing with the wider field. You're harmonizing with that infinite field that is in between all of us. Basic quantum physics. So I encourage you to take these little snippets of information here and really learn about anything that I'm speaking about, or you can just message me and we can start up a dialogue about it. I'm more than happy to do that. But there's so much power in us creating this coherence. And in this coherence, it's like a channel into this wider field that we're creating here. Let me just move this over here. So what happens in brain coherence? So during brain coherence, there's an interesting element. So in your imagination, if you imagine that you're doing something, it activates the same areas of the brain as it does if it's real movement. So there's a really beautiful example of this, is a guy that ended up in hospital, and he couldn't do anything, he couldn't move, and he really wanted to learn to play the piano. So during his time in hospital, he started to learn the piano, and he did this through his mind. So he did this through creating this imaginary environment where he would think through how he was going to play the piano. He was playing the piano. He learned the notes. He learned, he envisaged how it was going to sound. He was going through this whole experience. And what happened is that then when he got out of hospital, he could play the piano. So this is a real good example, and you can see here on the diagrams here about how the real movement. So for example, if I am doing star jumps, or if I'm imagining the star jumps, my brain is activating in the same way. And what's happening with that is that then you're creating the hormones, you're creating the new epigenetic structure, you're creating the same neural pathways as if you were doing the movement yourself. So what happens is when we move from the thinking brain into the subconscious brain, we use the meditative state to come out of the thinking brain, out of our physical self, connect with the wider field, and then we imagine what it is that we want to create. And we feel like it's there. We feel gratitude. We feel elevated emotions. We feel all of these exciting things about, whoa, look at what I'm creating here. And when we're creating that, it's such a powerful experience for us, because when we create it in the wider field and we come back down into our beta brainwaves, your resonance, your body, your vibration is already achieving what it is that you've imagined. So it's the same as the guy that was learning the piano. When he came out of hospital, he could play the piano because he'd imagined it enough. It's the same thing with what you want to create. So the same with my healing, I decided there was not going to be any fluid in that second scan. I didn't want that. That wasn't in my story anymore. My story had been created through drama and through pain. I didn't want any of that anymore. I wanted to be well. I wanted to be healthy. So I focused on that, and I created it in my kind of external non-thinking brain. I shifted into the alpha brainwave states, into the theta brainwave states, and I connected to that reality, and I felt as if it was already here. Now, this is like documented so much through neuroscience, through epigenetics. So there's a piece that often we are challenged with around how our genetics create our life. And there's proof through epigenetics. I mean, this is all science-based stuff. So epigenetics is about how we can create the genetics that we want. So we don't have to be tied with the genetics that we're given. Epigenetics is an evolving experience. So your genetics can evolve. If you create something different, you can evolve it. Some people use, nutrition, brainwave states, breathing, trance work, dance, movement. It's pure focus on wanting to create something different in your life. You can achieve that. So this is where those correlations in that brainwaves and the correlations between real and imagined is really coming forwards here. So what happens when you go into coherence? Loads of really cool things. So these are all the benefits of being in coherence. So if you take a look at the slide here, you've got increased inner orientation, improved reflexes, increased intelligence. Increased intelligence. Why would you not meditate when you get increased intelligence? Unbelievable. Improved academic performance, decreased trait anxiety, state anxiety. So lots of people that suffer from anxiety really get a beautiful, beautiful benefit from utilizing this coherent state. The more relaxed mind in the alpha and theta states, it helps you to really decrease neuroticism. Helpful, right? So this really helps us to relax on a daily basis. I know for myself, if I don't do my meditation in the morning, or I don't do some breath work, I don't focus on that, I can't tap into that calm space as easy during the rest of the day. So this is really a tool for us to be able to tap into this calm, centered space and use it as a foundation, and also use it to tap into unlocking our potential, the potential that we want to create in that space. So now I'm going to speak a little bit about polyvagal theory. So polyvagal theory, these wonderful slides are from an amazing lady called Deb Dana, who speaks very in a modern way about polyvagal theory, which I really love. So she speaks about the vagus system and the sympathetic nervous system. So there's the two systems that work within our body for the nervous system. The parasympathetic, which is the ventral vagus and the dorsal vagus primarily, and the sympathetic nervous system. So let me talk to you through that a little bit. So our vagus nerve runs from the base of our spine, base of our head, down through our system. It's one of the biggest nerves, and it runs into the heart space, which is the ventral vagus, and down into our gut area, which is the dorsal vagus. So it has two strands. This vagus nerve kind of determines our state. So if we activate the ventral vagus, it will, that's in our heart space here, it will give this sense of kind of safety, connection, calmness, super beautiful, yummy, connected feeling. If you're activating your dorsal vagus, this is that feeling that you get where it's like tight in your stomach. It's quite primal. It's like a protection. It's a closing down. It's a numbing, a closing of your state. So that's the vagus nerve really affects our mood systems a lot. Then you have the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight. So it's that I've got to do something, I've got to go somewhere, I've got to fix something. Previously it was a wonderful nervous system trait that would help us to escape from dangerous animals, saber-toothed tigers, for example. We would see one, freeze, run. So it's fight or flight. Am I going to stand here? Am I going to fight? Or am I going to leave? Now, what's happened is that these nervous systems that we've had, these response systems that have been serving us so well when we were primitive people living on the land and hunters and gatherers, now what's being activated is this can be activated through thought alone. So if you're sitting in the car and you're in traffic and you're feeling the pressure of you needing to get to work or needing to get somewhere, what's happening is it activates the fight or flight system. So you're dropping into a fight or flight stress response. So there's a wonderful guy called Bruce Lipton. He speaks a lot around the biology of belief. He speaks a lot about how when you're in the state of stress, there is no space for growth. It's very similar to kind of the growth mindset situation as well. So when you're in the stressor state, you cannot evolve. You're just under a pressure. And in that state, there's three things that are important to you: the time, your physical environment, and your body. So those things are the most important things for you, and you cannot think about anything else. So you will think about, where is the safety? How long is it going to take me to get there? How am I going to get there? And activating the body to get there. You don't think about anything else. The body, environment, and time. So in that state, there's no space to create. There's no space to expand, find your potential, see what's going on, assess the situation. You're under emergency. So it also depletes all of your health systems, the immune system. It's a highly stressful state. So it's not about regeneration. It's not about relaxation. You're on high alert and you're ready to go. So that is not the most ideal state to be in. As people with severe anxiety and everything else will know, it's not a nice place to be on a daily basis. So I'm going to be speaking about polyvagal theory because it will help you to start to learn the systems that are happening in your body and how you can start to navigate those on a daily basis and come more into that ventral vagus system. So this parasympathetic nervous system, that kicks in and will either create this beautiful sense of safety where you can restore grow, be healthy, be relaxed, be with others, or you will be in this state of dorsal vagus, which is the shutdown, the numbness. I'm sure you guys will have experienced that at times in your life, often when you're in conflict with others. So this is called the autonomic ladder. This is also a wonderful, simple representation. So during the day, we will be somewhere on this ladder. So you may be activated in the sympathetic when you're rushing to work. You may drop into ventral vagus when you get home, or you're feeling held by your partner, or when your children give you a hug, or when you happen to be deep breathing somewhere watching the sunset in nature. That's the ventral vagal. And then you're in the sympathetic, and then you can also drop into the dorsal. So if, for example, someone has an argument with you and you drop into that closure, and it's like, oh, like, you know, you really need to kind of like step away, get away. So this is the autonomic ladder that we move up and down on a regular occasion during the day. So I'm going to speak a little bit about these different places on the ladder, and it's about us learning how to move up and down the ladder ourselves, how we can navigate our system to work better with this system that we are given, with the nervous system, with our response system. How do we navigate that so we're not under stress and we're more in the comfort space, we're more in the relaxation space? We can tap then into the wider field, we can create more, we can regenerate, and we can be healthy. So again, we're going to look at the ventral vagal. So ventral vagal is safe and we're social. So we're social creatures. So you can see here there's some key words around how you act, how you feel when you're in ventral vagal. You're passionate, you're warm, open-hearted, connected. You enjoy being out in the world, playful, focused, meditative. You know, the world is welcoming and filled with opportunity. Beautiful kind of like, you know, flow of life. You're very comfortable. Everybody wants to feel like this all the time, right? Then you have the sympathetic, which is the mobilized fight or flight, out of control, confused, overwhelmed, angry, confrontational. So you're like ready to run, ready to fight, can't sleep, you crave food and substances. Food and substances. Who knows about that? So, you know, this is where we're in this space of like looking for something, we're searching for something, we're like, you know, we're feeling a bit like, oh, you know, everything is a bit much. I am crazy and toxic, and the world is unfriendly, scaring, or exploding. I'm not entirely sure about exploding, but, you know, it's really this like chaotic state of like high alert, you know. Then you have the dorsal vagus. So this is when you're dropping into that like pit almost, where you're like knocked down, where you're numb, you're just like, oh, I can't, you know, you just want to be left alone. It says here immobilized and collapsed. So dark, foggy, silent, out of focus, hopeless, helpless, disconnected, shut down, not here, can't get out of bed, you eat without thinking, feel abandoned and unwanted. So this is really a deep sense of suffering that we can have activated within our nervous system. And this stuff, how we move up and down this ladder, is often affected by our environmental and social aspects that we've been through in our life. So it's about learning where you are on the ladder at any one time. And then we're going to speak in a second just about how to move these states, how to shift between these states. So the words here are, I am unlovable, invisible, lost and alone. The world is cold, empty and uninhabitable. So it's a very sensitive space to drop into. I know me, for one, I often drop into this space if I'm connecting with humans and we have an argument or something happens, I start to feel unsafe, and I really can drop into this space of closure. And it's a strategy that I had from very young. You know, there was some screaming in my household, so I would often close. And when I would close, I would back away, I would, you know, go inside myself. And so it's a strategy that I learned from a young age of how to protect myself. Now, all of these things, they're not negative. They're not negative behaviors within yourself. They're not negative experiences. They're not something that you should criticize yourself for. This is pure science of self. This is pure, like, everybody goes up and down this ladder every day. Some people may be more in ventral vagal. Some people may be more in fight or flight. Maybe they have a lot of anxiety. Maybe other people are more in the dorsal vagal. They're really feeling unsafe. And this can depend on your environment, your social aspects. It can depend on your traumas, your past traumas, what happens in our subconscious. So by the time you're 35, 95% of your actions are subconscious. And that's because this is created, these patterns are created throughout our life, through our experience. So we learn the strategies, we become an automatic system. Our neural pathways get set up, everything is like automated. So however you are right now, wherever you are on the ladder, even on any instant moment of the day, it's just because that's what's become almost automatic. But there's this 5% of hope where we can utilize that 5% to really tap into that wider field and see what we want to create and learn to monitor ourselves, learn to see where we are and say, what do I need right now? I feel like I'm really in fight or flight. I'm scared, or I'm in dorsal vagus. Like, what is it that you need in that space to make you feel safer? So we're about learning here, learning about ourselves and what's happening inherently in our system. So this is where we will speak about what to do. So shifting dorsal vagus. So dorsal vagus is this deep sense, basically, this deep sense of closure. Now, when you're in this state, it's a very sensitive time for yourself. So be gentle. Take gentle actions that increase that feeling of safety. It's helpful before you drop into that space to start to think about what it is that makes you feel safe. What environments make you feel safe? What places make you feel safe? What people? What within yourself makes you feel safe? And start to see those things, and then when you drop into that dorsal vagus state, you can tap into that and be like, wait a second, I should go to the sea, or create a space in your house where you can go to where you feel safe. Make a discussion with the people that you live with. You know, when I'm feeling like this, I want to be left alone. Maybe you want being held. Maybe you don't want people around. This is for you to understand how your manual works. How does your system work for you, and how do you make yourself feel safer when you're in that space? So it's gentle, caring for yourself, being able to communicate with others about what you need in that space. Shifting fight or flight is different. So the sympathetic nervous system needs discharge. So often, you know, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but, you know, if you're experiencing anger, you're experiencing strong emotions, sometimes it's really helpful just to I like to go to like cliffs or whatever and just like rage, you know, just like express. Sometimes I find in the car when I'm driving, if I'm like stressed out, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like feeling so like, it's like just let it out, you know, allow the experience. You know, some people I know like kind of like punch pillows, or, you know, whatever it is that you feel you need to do, dance or express or move, or just allow the movement of the emotion to happen. Allow yourself to discharge. If that doesn't feel good for you in that moment, you can also regulate the ventral vagus. So how do you do that? So the ventral vagus is activated by sighing. So you notice maybe within yourself that sometimes when you're feeling like something is a bit much, you'll find yourself being like, you know, it's a, and that sigh is actually helping yourself to activate the ventral vagus. So you can just practice right now, just have some breaths and give it a sigh, you know. It's such an immediate feeling of this dropping of whatever it is that you're feeling. And it's such a powerful experience. So when you're in that fight or flight, what do you need? Do you want to activate this ventral vagus, take yourself into a quiet space, go into that deep breathing, do some sighing, or discharge. So if you're feeling angry, just rage. If you're around people and you don't feel that it's practical to rage, one of my friends also offers this space of like, you know, silent screaming. So you can go and you can be like, you know, take yourself into a space where you can express or feel in your body this emotion that you're feeling, and allow it to be expressed. So often in our life, we have grown up suppressing our emotions, suppressing these things, and that's when the trauma locks in. You know, when we're young or what have you, and we're told like, don't cry, you know, don't make a fuss, or you feel bad that you're taking up space, or you know, you'll feel bad that you're expressing or what have you. This is when things start to get seeded, and then they become something small. I'm sure you guys, maybe when you live with people and there's like one thing that's really annoying, and then you don't say it, and then all of a sudden there's two things that's really annoying, and then all of a sudden there's 10 things that are really annoying, then all of a sudden you can't stand the people that you're living with anymore. And this is a normal procedure that happens when you don't express. So in this way, it's an encouragement to start to express. This doesn't mean that you have to like vomit all of your emotions over somebody else, but it's about you expressing, you accepting, you allowing this emotion to move through you, whatever it is. And that's not just about anger or negative emotions. It's also about joy. It's about pleasure. It's about feeling. It's about allowing ourselves to express in this human form. And the more that we learn to express and we allow this release in our life, the more that we're at ease, then the more that we're dropping into that state of creation and not into that state of stress. So then there's maintaining the ventral vagus. So when we're feeling nice and warm and fuzzy, you know, how do we make sure that we stay in that as much as possible? Obviously, deep breathing can keep us in that state, because I know sometimes, you know, if I'm like super chilled, maybe I'm by the pool or I'm at the beach or what have you, then I start to think about all the things that I need to do when I get home, or I've got to like cook, or I've got to clean something, or I've got to do something, or that's that thing about at work. And you start dropping into that really like fast beta state. You start to think about all of these things, and you can catch yourself. And when you catch yourself, you can be like, wait, I'm getting stressed. I'm getting into that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system. Let me just take some breaths. And you can come back into that quiet space, that calm space again. And you can also help each other. So if, for example, you're in a relationship, a guy that I'm working with at the moment in America is really good at discussing like how to regulate each other. So I found out that relationships are not actually about like individuals being really good at like self-care or what have you. It's about both of us working in the relationship to co-regulate each other. It's about learning the manual of the other person. What does the person need when they're out of regulation, and how can you support that? And vice versa. It's a commitment to both of you learning how to regulate each other and being there for each other in those moments. And he gave an example of two really simple acts that we can do. So, for example, when you come home, say somebody has been outside, they've been at work, they get home, they're a bit stressed. The other person's been at home all day, they're super chilled. Then the person turns up from work and they're all like, rah, 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 and it's really ruffling. So it's ruffling for both people. The person that's quite edgy, that's come in from work, can find it frustrating that the person's super relaxed, and the super relaxed person can find it's frustrating that the other person's really hyperactive and is a bit edgy. Maybe they're a bit grumpy. So the offering is to, when that person comes home, to just hold them in that space, regulate your nervous systems. So what happens, this is something else that Deb Dana really goes into, is and Porge as well, who's the like kind of founder of the polyvagal theory. It's like that when we have a nervous system, we're attracted to other nervous systems because we like to co-regulate. So that's why it feels nice when you're in the company of other humans, especially if you're in the company of somebody who's super relaxed. You know, when you turn up at somebody's house and they're super chill, and then you're like, oh, man, this feels really good, you know. feels really nice, feels really relaxing. So it's this whole piece around working together to co-regulate each other, communicating prior to any instances where there may be friction, to be like, hey, this is what I really like to regulate myself. Can you support me in that? And the other person being like, hey, this is what I need to regulate myself. Can you support me in that? Another great tip that he gave was to write on the fridge, for example. You know, when we're both at each other and neither of us can regulate each other, what do we need to do? We go to the fridge and we say, I need to go for a walk. And the other person says, I need to go and read a book. And you go off and you deal with it yourself, because in those instances you can't have the capacity to co-regulate, and that's okay too. So these two things were really helpful. So his name is Ryan Ginn, and he speaks a lot about Stan Takin and the relationship RX models. Super great stuff. So if you're in a relationship as well, even with other just normal friends, it's important to understand how we can influence each other and how we can help each other to regulate. So these are kind of like some tips about how to move up and down the ladder, how to clear these things, and how to move in this space. So what I'd like to talk about just before I leave is this aspect of deep trauma. So when we're in the state of deep trauma, sometimes we can't tap into it. We have to go into that subconscious state. So if you're suffering from something that is something that you feel is discussed in this workshop that we've just been through, something that would be helpful to learn about meditation, learn about breathing, learn about movement practices, please send me an email. I'm going to move on to the next slide in a minute, and you'll find my email address there. Please get in touch. If you want to bring some of this science into your life more, please research, look into stuff. If there's a deep-seated trauma in there, which you are struggling either to redefine or even understand, or you feel out of control with something that's locked inside of you that you know is controlling your external environment, but you don't know how to tap into it, get in touch. There's a few people that deal with something that I'm super passionate about. I help to co-facilitate holotropic breathwork. Now, holotropic breathwork allows you to tap into that really deep meditative space and takes you into trance work. So your higher consciousness will guide you to the trauma that needs to be cleared in that time. And it's the only way that I have been through, which has helped me clear my relationships with my father. It helped me clear my relationships with my mother before she passed away. It's helped me get rid of so many stories and perceptions that I had from 20, 30 years ago in my childhood, and allow me to see things in a different perspective. So when you go into that trance state, it really helps you to be free from that deep-seated trauma and helps you to pop out, and you start to see things in a different perception. So if you need support with that, please get in touch as well. There's an amazing Russian doctor here as well called Lydia Ukoneva, who I work with on this stuff, who's a transpersonal psychologist. And if you're based in Malta, we can work together to do some sessions with you. If you want to learn about nutrition that helps you with anxiety, helps you stop being in that space, please get in touch. If you want to learn about anything to do with like meditative states and how to utilize those, please get in touch also. I will be doing another session on meditation and pranayama as well. Not sure if it will be within the video library of Earth Garden, but this will definitely be something that is also released from our side. So please stay in touch. Ask any questions that you have about any of the stuff that we've covered in this. I'm going to be also putting together a Science of Self series of an online course, which deals with kind of, the brainwave states. It deals with polyvagal theory. It deals with other skills such as like how to communicate about your emotions, how to communicate about what your needs are, which is what's underneath the emotions, how to learn to connect better with others, So all of this stuff is stuff that we can start this dialogue about and start to give you the tools to be able to navigate and understand what's going on within yourself. And please just remember that we are all humans. Everybody is the same when it comes to these human systems. So often we can feel that we are not good enough, we're not doing well enough, we're not performing, you know, in a good way, or that we feel that we're the only one going through this process. And it's surprising once you start sharing about really this deep things that are happening within you, how much solidarity it creates between the other people, because we've all gone through different emotional states. We've all gone through suffering, and we've all gone through healing times. We've all gone through joy. We've all gone through this plethora of emotions. Now, when it comes to like things like severe anxiety as well, my friend has set up an anxiety group. So please do get in touch if you're suffering from that. She's also managed to navigate her way out of kind of severe anxiety and panic attacks. So I can put you in touch with her. Yeah, just wanted to talk about our own potential. What we want to create in our lives is possible to create. If we want to heal, if we want to journey, if we want to connect with this wider field, it's there and it's waiting. And it's just about us unleashing ourselves. So thanks for listening, and I'll be in touch soon. I will put my contact details up here. So there's my email address there. These are the 3 businesses that I also run. So if you want to speak to me about anything to do with sustainability, feel free also. So there's my email address. Get in touch and speak to you soon. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of the workshops.